Welcome to the Drilling Millions podcast, presented by Sage Dental Partners.
You know, you have almost two ways of, I feel like two very distinct ways that you have to think about things, right? You're obviously a very competent clinician to a point where you can even teach about, clinical dentistry. But then you also run a really successful big practice. And part of the show is peeling back the onion on how to actually do that, because you never get taught that in dental school. So why don't you just tell us the process of how you grew, your private practice from when it started to now where it's at, which I think is about 24 ops.
Yeah. So it's been a journey for sure. When I was in dental school, I remember hearing stories. You know what? Let's take a step back. Okay. I was a true broke boy, man. Like, I grew up dirt poor, and my dad and we were homeless at a time, and I was 13 years old. And I remember my dad saying, "Do you want this life?" And I was like, "No, I don't want this life." And he said, "It's time to study." And I was always the class clown. I was always the loud one. And it was until that happened to me, until I had to get that job at Pizza Hut working 30 hours a week at 14 years old. That's when like something clicked in my head, and it was like, okay, you're going to work, and life is going to be about work, and you're going to work harder than anyone you can. And that was my mentality. And that's still my mentality today. And I always tell people, when you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you hustle and you work. And I don't know why, even though I know where my next meal is coming from now, like I still have that mentality that I need to always be doing something. I always need to be working. So that eventually led me into dentistry, and that's a different story. But in dental school, I always looked at these guys. I'm like, how do these guys own so many practices? Like, I would talk to a guy who would own 12 practices. I'm like, why would you want to own 12 practices? Like, how do you have your name on 12 different doors and expect to have that same level of connection with people? And I was never always really good or really focused on the business side of dentistry. To me, dentistry was more about connection, and it was more about like how I can connect with people and help them and change their lives, give them confidence, have them be able to walk an inch taller with a smile so big, you know what I mean? And so that's, to me, that's what dentistry was. And so I graduated, and I needed a job, and I graduated from the University of Saskatchewan, and my partner and I, she was working in Lloydminster, Alberta already, so that's 2 hours from Saskatoon. And I was like, okay, let's go there and let's work. And back then there was, I believe it was 9 ops, and we bought the practice. And I remember going to my banker on December 30th, 2009, and being like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can take out a loan for this much money, because this amount of money is unfathomable to me. Like, I had 150 grand of student loans. And even then I was like, how am I going to ever pay this back? Right. And now you're taking a loan for millions of dollars, and you're like, do I really have this in me? And I remember I didn't sleep for weeks after that. And the very first day we owned the practice, the very first day, January 4th, 2010, I would go to unlock the door, walk in, and there is water everywhere. I'm talking everywhere. The entire practice is flooded. And now I have these millions of dollars of loans, and tears are literally rolling down my face as the broke boy from 1996 who had nothing now takes these loans out and now has nothing again. And I remember just like my heart just dropped. What are we going to do? We have patients booked. I got loan payments to make, and now my practice is literally flooded. And the owner in Alberta, we had to like install these hydrants, like these like fancy dishwashers, these $10,000 KitchenAid dishwasher, basically, right? That washes your instruments. And he did it himself. And I was like, man, just hire a plumber, man. He did it himself because that was part of the agreement that needed to be in place. And he did it himself, and it flooded. Like, he didn't attach a hose properly. Oh man, it brings heart palpitations now. And that was then. So, eventually you grow on that. And a couple years later, we had the opportunity. There was a pet store beside us, and they were moving. So we're like, okay, well, should we open that area? Like, should we buy that area? And I was always stuck in a fixed mindset. If you've heard the growth versus fixed mindset ideas and mentalities, I was always, I was always fixed mindset. Like, I can just work really hard at this one thing, and I can't, I wasn't accepting of new ideas out there. And my partner was like, no, Nekky, this is something we have to do. And so I was choked. And back then, we paid, I think, about 500 grand to expand into this area. And, then we had, I think 17 ops, and it allowed us to grow. And then I could really see, like, man, we could get more associates, and then we got more hygiene, and then we grew again. Like during COVID, we took over the travel agent next door, and we were able to expand again. And then I really wanted to create this this vibe that the 13-year-old me would just love. And so I've always been big into old school hip hop. And I know it's not the traditional dental office, but I wanted to create a section of this office that was dedicated to the 13-year-old Nekky. And so I put the rap quotes on the wall from my youth when I was listening to Biggie in the basement on a tape, or like, whatever, Outcast. Or so I put these rap quotes on the wall, and if you go on my Instagram, you can see it. And in like 6-foot letters, it says it was all a dream, because it was. And
Holy
to
cow.
me, it was all a dream is not a rap quote. It's not about Biggie. It's about me, because it was my dream to get here.
Yeah.
And this is what dentistry is to me now. So, man, I get all choked just listening to it, because I was that 13-year-old kid that had nothing. And now I look at where I am now, and I'm just so blessed and grateful, because it was all a dream, and it still is right now. And I go to work every day, and I'm just so energetic, because I'm like, man, these people hate being here. Let's be honest. No one likes dentistry, right? But if I can give my all to these people here, what more can I give? You know what I mean? I live a life of service. If I can give my all to you and create a good experience for you, this is my dream. I'm living my dream. Everyone says, like, Nekky, you work too much. You go home, you work. You go to school, or you teach, you work, and you go to like work during the day. And I don't care. I'm living my dream. I'm the happiest kid in the candy store right now, man. Like, I am loving my life. And this is my dream, and it's turned into something awesome here.
So how do you, because from the perspective of, little Nekky, and, looking at it from that perspective, and having the mentality that he must have had versus, the mentality you have now, which is, you said fixed versus growth. How do you manage those two parts of your brain? Because we started the conversation by talking about like dentistry and business, but screw that. That's obviously that's not the important part. It's like, how do you manage the two voices in your own head?
Totally, because I slip into a fixed mindset constantly, where I feel like I can't do things, and I'm not good enough to do things, or I'm just not smart at certain things, so I can't do it. Like business, I may not be the smartest business dude out there. I've made some pretty bad decisions, but I've made some failures, some mistakes, of course, lost some money. That's okay. But was I able to learn from that scenario? Do I know what to do next time? Is it me that is dumb and made a wrong choice? Or was it, myself being a little greedy in a certain scenario that made the choice? And so I used to think like I made some bad investing decisions, and I'm more than happy to talk about all of them, because that's how our dentists grow around us, right? No one's talking about their failures. And until you can turn that switch and say, listen, this is an error. It did not go as planned, but I know what to do next time. That's the growth mindset. It's like always willing to try new things. It's learning about new things, knowing that it's not you that's dumb. It's, you just made a bad decision. You're not going to let that decision define who you are. I think that's growth mindset. It's knowing that the next string of pearls that you put down on there is going to be awesome, because it is going to lead to something amazing. And you have to keep on trying new things and experimenting and learning what works and what doesn't. And knowing that every person you meet is going to have a different path than you. And I talk to dentists that own 30 practices, and then I talk to me that just owns one. But like, man, I'm so freaking happy. And I don't care how much money they make. They don't care how much money I make. I don't care how green their grass is. And it took me a long time to get to that point where I stopped really caring how other people around me are doing. And I'm happy for them and I applaud them, but I need to focus on me because it's my story. And that's how I deal with it. Is I applaud the people around me that are killing it, and I cheer them on because I want to be their biggest cheerleader. But I also know that their situation isn't mine, and I always want to make the best of my decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And before the podcast, I was just doing some, research into your socials and stuff. And I had actually seen you as, I didn't know the story in your background. So I'd seen you as just a very, forward-thinking dentist, because, you have videos on your Instagram of like, this videographer that looks like he has some really cool editing, and he comes in and he like films you doing the procedures, and not your traditional way where it's just like a fixed camera angle. It's like music, it's like Drake in the background, it's super hype. Also another thing, if you ever Google yourself, there's a Spotify link that's to someone named Nekky Jamal. And I was like, holy shit, this guy he's a pop star too.
What? I gotta check this.
Yeah. Look it up. I'll send you the link. And I was like, I had no idea. It's like 20,000 listens a month. Like, why is he still in dentistry?
That's awesome, man.
But it's interesting because you take on that whole other aspect of, even when you look at dentists, a lot of them rest on their laurels, right? You have the ones that really want to grow, but then you have the others that sort of rest on their laurels a little bit. And it's like, yeah, I'm happy with, where I'm at, which again, it's not a mindset that's bad to have. I think you should always be content, once you hit a certain level, because the post will always move. But, you strike me as someone that's with respect to, your marketing and your practice, like you're always growing and you're always trying to find new areas and new places to grow into. Even look at your podcast setup. Most people do it from their like iPhone, right? So it's like you have that going for you.
Yeah, no, if I do something, I want to be the best at it, and I want to dive in 100%. And if those things, let me take a step back. I think the problem right now that a lot of people face is, if it doesn't lead to a financial reward, I'm not going to do it. But I think once you start chasing those financial rewards, exactly what you just said, the post always moves. And, you thinking you want $1 million after 5 years after you graduate, fine, you get it. You're not any happier. Nothing changes, except you've now moved your goalpost to 5 million, and you chase it for what? Like, you can have as much money as you want in the world. It's not going to make you happier. You're just going to have more discontent that it's not more. You're always going to want more, and understanding that about you, and understanding that's the ego side of us that always is chasing more and more. That's not what's going to make you happy. If you have to do it for the right reasons, you want to be able to look inside and be like, listen, this is my goal. I want to grow this. And you want to, think how you're going to grow it, because it's not the end goal that we're after. It's the process. If you can fall in love with the process of doing anything, whether that leads to a financial reward or not, if you can love and understand the process, you're going to do phenomenal things in your career.
Yeah, 100%. I think those are the things that, just speaking to people on this podcast, it's kind of ironic because, speaking to people on the podcast, that's the number one thing that two things have popped, have kind of been a recurring theme. One is when you're growing something, just have incredible people around you, because, your self-worth is your network, and or your self-worth is, what is it? Your net worth is your network. That's one.
I like that. Yeah.
And the other is, if you're doing something, if you don't love it, if you're just doing it for the money, it'll never do well. And ironically enough, this podcast is one of the only things that, people are like, why do you just like, it's not like it's not making me a millionaire. It's not really, it has no, hidden agenda. It's just, I love talking to people and I love hearing people's stories. And for me, it's like, on a Saturday morning, you and I are just sitting here. I'm sure you could be coaching basketball and I could be
Yeah.
doing whatever I like to do, binging Netflix,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like, I just love doing this. It's like the thing I'm
Totally.
super passionate about.
Yeah. I totally agree. If passion isn't in it for you, exactly what you just said, man, there's no such thing as a quick buck out there. And unless passion drives your motivation, you're not going to do well and you're not going to succeed in whatever goal that may be. Um, man, I got so much to talk about this whole subject. I don't even know where to begin, man, because um, I used to be that dentist that was looking over the fence, and I'd be like, man, my buddy is opening a second practice, and I would internalize it and be like, what am I doing wrong? And so then I would dive into my numbers and I would be like, okay, I need to set these goals. I want to raise my hygiene by 4%. I want to cut my cost by 2.5%. How am I going to cut my cost by 2.5%? How am I going to grind on Sinclair to cut my cost 2%? How am I going to raise staff? How am I going to lower marketing? And it just became a numbers game for me. And I was hounding my accountant, man, give me my income statement so I can dive into this. But the income statements always came 6 weeks after, the month, right? And you're like, well, how am I supposed to create change if I don't know what's going on in real time? But then I just became miserable,
Yeah.
like absolutely miserable, because I was chasing these goalposts. Like, what does that matter? Why do I have to save 1% of my, year-end revenue and have a horrible time doing it? Why can't I just focus on the things in dentistry that bring me so much joy? And that is making cool videos. Like, people say, like, Nekky, you're great at marketing. And I'm like, I'm not marketing at all, man. Like, I'm just literally having fun. I've yet to spend a dime on marketing because I don't market. I just have fun. And that's where I'm at when it comes to those type of things. Is if you want to do something, just dive into it, but you have to have fun with it. Otherwise you won't do well with it. And I have so much passion and so much energy behind dentistry because this is so much fun for me. This is my hobby. Like, look at us, like, we're Saturday morning, like you said, there's nowhere else I would rather be but right here, right now, is talking about dentistry, because this is my life and I love it.
Yeah, you gotta love it. Just last week we had on Bloody Tooth Guy, or Dr. Jason
Oh
Auerbach.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on, I gotta follow him.
Yeah.
Oh geez.
He's
What an
awesome.
honor. What an
Yeah.
honor. Yeah,
He
absolutely. Yeah.
he's such an awesome guy. But we were talking about, the business side of it, and he's like, man, like, I never look at because you see he's growing. He's at like 10 practices, 10 oral surgery practices in New
Yeah.
York and New Jersey, and he wants to grow it by 10x. And I'm like, it's either one of two ways. You're either looking at the balance sheet, looking at the costs, and how much is this gonna, be, how much is gonna affect my bottom line? Is this gonna affect how much I take home? But I was so shocked to see that he was like, for example, he sponsored the New Jersey Devils, like the NHL team,
Yeah.
and he was like the official oral surgery provider. He's like, if I was in corporate, or if I was just focusing on the numbers, I would never get an ROI on that. The
Yeah.
ROI does not exist, because
No.
what it does offer me is, one, it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
Right. And two, I get free tickets to like send my staff, send my referring dentist to. It's great. I get to be involved with the organization. I'm passionate about it. So it's like things like that. If you're always looking, at your practice, at your business, even at your life, through this lens of ROI, it's just
Yeah.
going to be this like cycle of, you're never going to actually achieve that goal. You kind of have to put that stuff aside and be like, I'm just going to do this.
Totally. I 100% agree with that. And that also brings me to the point of why I will only stay in one practice, because I hear stories like that. And I used to think, and for all the dentists out there listening, um, you are no different than someone who owns 10 practices and wants to grow 10x versus staying in one practice. I don't think that, like, I don't want those dentists to feel inferior, because I used to feel so inferior because I would hear stories like that and it would just tear me apart. Be like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do that? Because, man, that dude, that's phenomenal. I'm so proud of that guy, man. Like, look at him. We're both dentists. I agree. He's a specialist, and he worked very hard to get to that point, and all due respect to him. But that doesn't mean that, the dentist working in one clinic is any smaller than that, but it's all your mindset, right? Like, do I want to do that? No, I don't want to do that. I applaud him for doing that, but that's not where my passion is. My passion is, and whatever your passion is, to find your passion. My passion is walking into the room and talking to that one crying patient that's so scared to get their wisdom teeth out, putting your hand on their shoulder and being like, listen, I'm going to take care of you. For me, that gives me so much value, and that makes me feel so good, like I've contributed to my day. You know what I mean? And I just want dentists to understand, especially dentists early in their career, you can't compare yourself to dentists that have 100 practices, or you're just working in your one. It doesn't make you any less of a clinician. And you have the ability of doing that if you so choose to do so. But don't tear yourself down, and don't always look at what your neighbor's doing. Just focus on your own story.
Yeah, it's so easy to look at, your neighbor, especially in the GTA where we have 5 practices on every street corner, right?
So it's rough, man. And I talked to dentists from there, and they beat themselves up internally, and they feel like they're not succeeding if they don't compare to their neighbors, if they're not driving a Porsche, or they're not living in this neighborhood. And until they understand none of that matters, they're always going to be stuck in their shell. And when they eventually realize that, you are the leader of your own story, and what they're doing, applaud them, but you are in charge of your own destiny, man, they will flourish, and they will contribute so much to our profession and to society. And we'll truly see their true energy of who they are once they let all that crap go and focus on themselves.
Yeah. Do you try to do your part in, looking at the grass is greener analogy? I'm currently still in school. All my peers are in school. We do dentistry actually, we pay to do dentistry at this point, right?
Pay to do that. I like that. I like that.
We pay to do dentistry. So it's like when we see people like you and have, 24 ops and, big practices and, flourishing careers, do you try to do your part in coaching sort of the younger dentists and saying, listen, it's not like you probably have at this stage more money than you ever thought you would, and more money probably than you know what to do with, but do you do your part in coaching younger dentists and saying, listen, it's not about the money, focus on, a passion, or yada, yada, yada. Do you do that?
Oh, absolutely. Like I was really humbled and honored to be the graduation keynote speaker last year at my university, at the University of Saskatchewan. And that's exactly what I said. It was like, I know you guys are all focused on growing and paying off your debt, and like, you're overly ambitious, and there's the cowboys in the class, and then there's the very nervous people in the class, like you were talking about. But you have to understand why you're here, and what your potential truly is, the damage your hands can actually make, like the errors and the power you actually have with your hands, because you can create so many amazing things out there, or these hands can actually be your worst nightmare too, right? And so it's so important to let the younger generation know that we all have incredible potential out there. And I try to reach out to as many of them as I can, and I get a lot of DMs from dental students, and I wish someone told me, 14 years ago when I graduated, that like the true power of your hands is you can help so many people around you in your hometown or across the world, and no one can take your education away, and you'll always have the opportunity to rebound from a mistake, or from an error, or from a failure, and you will grow as a person, as a clinician. And I hope to say that again. I'm like I was telling you before, I'm going to Montreal for the dental student conference, and there's, I think, 500 dental students across Canada, so I cannot wait to talk to all of them and share that with them, that we're all human, and life is a string of pearls, and you are going to be able to string the next pearl along, and that will all be your story, and you have the power of making it awesome.